So, I know I've talked about this before because others have mentioned it to me as well, but it does bear re-asking. And that is, did Ian Flynn cost himself the opportunity to write the dialogue, if not write stories, centered around the Sonic female cast in both the Archie and currently the IDW books? And the reason this is a question worth re-asking is, as I've mentioned previously and others have mentioned, as of late, this year, along with last year, and even towards the beginning of next year, but mostly this year and last year, marks the 10-year anniversary since Ian Flynn wrote the infamous and controversial Mecha Sally arc, or as some would dub it, the Mecha Sally World Tour 2 Death Egg Mark II arc. And the reason I've talked about this previously in the past and brought it up, and others have brought it up to me, is because they've noticed that when Ian would get credited as the head writer for a story, that it may look like he wrote the script, but the female dialogue doesn't seem to have his signature to it, if you know what I mean, like his signature writing or storytelling or anything like that, but most of the other story does. And when you look at some of the other stories like Spark of Life, and I think even recently with the story focusing on Amy, Cream, Belle, and then even the whole Amy, Cream, and Rouge deal, they were written, or at least co-written, by female writers. Like Aaliyah Baker helped write Spark of Life along with Ian. And Evan Stanley wrote some of the stories recently featuring the Sonic female cast in IDW. So you have to wonder, and again, because it is, worth re-asking of whether or not, Ian Flynn kind of cost himself the opportunity to write the dialogue, if not write stories for them, because of what he did to Sally. And the reason it's, always bears re-asking and wondering about is because, according to what some people told me, Sally was still looked at as a fan favorite. And that even some young girls up to that point enjoyed her character and looked up to her character as well. And as well as the longtime fans. So you have to be curious that because of the chance he took by going in the direction that he did, if whether or not he cost himself the opportunity to be like the sole writer, for the dialogue of the characters, in the book. Like basically if he cost himself an opportunity to write everything all the characters say, without somebody coming in and doing some of the other parts of the writing instead of him. You have to really think and wonder that. Because as some people pointed out, some of the stories in Archie through Sonic Universe and some of the stories in IDW that focused and featured and centered around a strong portion of the Sonic female cast were written by female writers. And that even the dialogue in some of the stories, although the stories could be credited to Ian as the head guy, that finalized them or finished them or put them together, some of the dialogue was written, if not their scenes, were written by a female writer. And if there's any truth to it, which honestly I do think there is, then, Ian Flynn has no one to really blame but himself. I mean, think about it this way. You are entrusted to not only clean up a mess left behind by one of the more infamous controversial writers in Ken Penders and to an extent Carl Bowlers, but you are given the task to basically try to simplify this book once more and try to make it, what it once was in the past. But yet, here, you have Ian Flynn basically pretty much kind of throwing that responsibility out the window, because he did something that, again, as I've mentioned before, had the potential to start out good at first, but then fell flat. And I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if, him telling the fans, that would ask him about, what happened to certain characters and all that, or how he would describe what happened to Sally, thanks to that Turing gun in 225, or, how he would probably describe and let the fans kind of speculate themselves of how she got weaponized. I don't think that did him any favors. I really don't. Because word of that could get, out to the head people at Archie, to even Sega, the representatives, and they could say, look, the guy could still write stories. He can still be credited as the head writer, but from now on, the dialogue of the female characters, the scenes with the female characters, all have to be written, if not supervised, by a female writer, so that they are done correctly and respectfully. You have to be curious and think maybe, that's why, like I said, Evan Stanley's now gotten a shot to write as a lead writer, not just in Archie, but IDW. Same with Aaliyah. You have to wonder if, all of that combined came back to bite Ian in the rear. I mean, again, we get he had, in his mind, the best intentions, from a storytelling perspective. But, I think, honestly, he just got too ambitious, and he should have thought better. Like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I can't do it, for not just the length he did it for, but he had to just get to the point of why it happened, get the character restored, and be done. And I don't think he would have lost any opportunities to write for the female cast, in a story, the dialogue, or do a full story based on them, period. But what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on Ian Flynn possibly having the opportunity, according to sources, that he cannot write for the female cast anymore, even if it's certain scenes and dialogues and stories he's credited for? And what are your thoughts of him not being able to, write stories focusing on them, period? What are your thoughts? Comment below, live chat during the premiere, and I will talk to y'all later. Oh, and super chats and super sticks are open too, would be appreciated. But guys, give me your thoughts, like I said, and I'll talk to you later.